Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to do a very entertaining story titled, How to Deal with My Husband's Resentment of My Past. And guys, this story is about a gal. She's posted her story online. This is the second day in a row I did a story that was posted online. I thought it was a very good one to cover here. She's 24, recently married to a dude who's 29, who's doing very well for himself. Very good job, investment properties. This is a guy definitely going somewhere in this world, which all guys should be. He's also a virgin until they got married. But you see, she is about as far from being a virgin as can possibly be. You're going to find out in this story that, she has quite an interesting background. And when I say interesting, I mean a high-numbered background, if you know what I mean. By the time she graduated high school, she claimed she had over 30 dudes, which we all know, typically if a number is given by a gal, you want to multiply that by a few other numbers. And in college, that number, over those 4 years in college, quite higher. However, she's bettered herself since. At some point, she found religion, found Jesus, and I guess all that's in the past now, and married the guy and neglected to mention anything of her past. But as you all know, these things do come out. And let's just say that her husband did not take this too well. And aside from her very high numbers, she also was very adventurous with her lovers back in the day. And also did a lot of substances, which you guys can imagine what they were. But with her current husband, who she claims she loves so much and respects so much, she's not interested in doing anything remotely adventurous or freaky, even though he wants that. And I'm doing this, guys, for a lot of reasons. One, of course, entertainment. We're here for the entertainment. But also as a lesson, how you have to do your homework. You guys are watching, are marrying types. Think about one day, even though you watch this stuff and maybe you use it to prepare yourself for down the road. You come from a culture that you're going to get married anyway, or religion, or one day you want kids. So you watch this to learn some things to watch out for. You got to do your homework. You got to find out who she is. And I kid you not, I think thanks to all this content going around YouTube and more guys being aware, I think the private investigator field is going to take off. Anybody who wants to go into private investigating is going to make a fortune. I think all guys at this point should really hire a PI before they say I do, to find out the real details. And you have to be careful who you're getting involved with and know about their past, because it does matter. A guy has a right to know. And I might add, a woman has a right to know about her guy's past as well. And it doesn't have to be just body count, just stuff like it. It could be all sorts of other things about him. Both parties deserve to know. And also, the old bait and switch thing, that element is here too, and how when it comes to the guys that the gals really want, typically their validation and attention, often they're willing to do all sorts of freaky things to make them happy, but the guy they settle for, ding, 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 they get the bare minimum, because the woman doesn't see him that way. But anyhow, I've said enough here. I'm in the mood to talk, so I'm going to jump into this story, and you'll see more I'm talking about in real time. So it starts off, she says, Hi, I'm a 24-year-old female, recently married to a wonderful man, 29-year-old male. He's strong, independent, kind, caring, and has a good career as a project manager making 6 figures. Hey, well, good for him. He also has multiple investment properties and a lot of interesting hobbies. He was truly a blessing for me to find, and I love him sincerely. Well, you have a funny way of showing it, as I know darn well what's going to happen here. But notice, she found herself a catch, right? I wasn't at a good place in my life when I met him. Typically, broken home scenario, with parents arguing all the time, not getting enough attention from dad, ding, ding, ding. I didn't know what my identity was, ding, 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 and I didn't feel loved. So without going into too much detail, I wasn't the ideal girl. The things I did were done to cope with my low self-esteem and the void that was my life during that time. So a few stereotypes here. Not getting enough attention from dad, and then usually these gals have to get attention from every dude that crosses their path. You catch my point. Broken home, which no child should grow up in. When I say broken, not divorce, but just fighting and turmoil and all that, which is why I tell you guys that if you're staying in a bad marriage because of the kids, and you're fighting all the time with your wife, your kids could end up in a marriage just like yours, or a daughter behaving in such a way because to escape from her bad environment. No kid should go through that. When we met, I was 22 years old and just finishing school. I remember the first day I met him. I remember reading my horoscope earlier that day, and it almost prophesized this meeting. Oh, for goodness sake. One of those, huh? That'll tell you everything. We met at a party that my Christian friend invited me to, and we got introduced. I told him about my beliefs, and he shared his and invited me to church. In other words, this chick is crazy. I'm going to take her to church and show her some real things. Jesus will help her. Fast forward, from that point forward, it was like a time warp because our friendship later turned into a relationship. So they started off as friends. And then obviously, this guy's going somewhere in the world, making good money for his age. Investment properties, you don't say? Okay, we'll ignore the details of my past. I was able to get a job with my degree close to where he lived, and so I relocated and our relationship took off. What the hell was her degree in? Palm reading? He then popped the question not too long afterwards. Smack! The hell are you doing, dude? I told him that I thought he was handsome, and I loved that he was motivated to progress in his career and live an interesting life. In comparison to most of the guys I was around, he definitely had his stuff together. Is she trying to say that the type of guys she normally gets together with, spends time with, aren't exactly the most motivated of guys? Perhaps in drinking, drugs, Lord knows what, those type of guys? And I bet those guys got whatever they wanted with her. He told me he loved my gentle spirit and that he loved my modest demeanor and my apparent innocence. And that I was a great communicator who didn't play games. And I am a good conversationalist. If she neglected to tell him even a shred of the details of her past, that's not playing games to me. And the whole apparent innocence, well, we'll get into that in a moment. We got married not too long ago. And so you ask, why did I describe the background to you? Well, I believe we had different ideas of who we truly were before. Because you didn't let him know who you truly were before. You know who he was, but he sure as hell didn't know who you were. And that's not cool. He has a right to know about your past. And I'm willing to bet you, in fact, actually I know the answer to this question, that she knew that if he was aware of her activities and adventures prior to him, he wouldn't have gotten involved with her. And there's a reason for that, as you guys will certainly see. The guys deserve to know. Before we got married, we did talk about our past. Well, clearly not enough. He had a couple serious girlfriends, one engagement, but he was still a virgin. I was kind of vague and told him that I had a boyfriend or two, and that I did progress to sex, but I assured him that I was in love with him, and that was during a bad time in my life. So she just told him I had a boyfriend or two, and it progressed to the sex. So he's thinking, okay, maybe she's had a few guys, okay, I can live with that. An outright freaking lie. I mean, good Lord, is what you're about to hear. Well, the trouble started on the wedding night. He noticed that I was experienced, and he tried to probe a little more. Interesting choice of words. But I told him that stuff never really leaves you. He seemed depressed about that, especially when I was trying to teach him. He improved greatly, and our sex lives got better. And the questions became less about my past until one night. We went to a party in my hometown to celebrate the engagement of my oldest friends. And there was a guy that attended who I used to be intimate with. You know, guys, I've done a number of stories, both here and mostly on the other channel, They Did What, which you also subscribe to. And where a couple gets married, or couples together for a while, and the guy doesn't know her real story, and they go to some party or gathering, and she happens to run into a guy that in her past she was romantic with. It's like, how many people out there, how high are these numbers that you actually run into somebody you're hooking up with? It's just so, it seems to happen all the time in these stories. It's very funny to me. Anyway, he kept sneering at me and looking at the direction at the party, my direction at the party the whole time. My husband even noticed, but I told him that don't mind him. Later that night, after we had a few drinks in us, we went back to our hotel. My husband found out that I was embellishing my body count by a lot. That found out by a lot. That jerk at the party told my husband in some punch bowl conversation that I was the town doorknob and that I had been with at least 30 guys before college. So let me put that in perspective here. In college, you're living in the dorms or living off campus. You're generally away from your family and the watchful eye of your parents. So it's a lot easier to do what you want, right? When you're living at home, obviously it's not as easy. So she had 30 by college, by the time she got out of high school. Now, we all know the old joke, like if a gal gives you a number, multiply times 3. Guy gives you a number, divide by 3, because both parties are full of shit, but for different reasons. So could that 30 really be 90 by college? So you can definitely say she really didn't give him a very accurate view of her past when they got together. Which is true, sadly. But I was going through a period of my life where I felt crushed emotionally all the time, and I kept chasing temporary happiness. Translation: I was in a bad place. Well, then maybe there's other options to choose than that, for goodness sake. That's not me now. And I try to tell him to put yourself in my shoes at the time. Would you be as strong? Well, how could he put himself in her shoes at the time when she was so busy she didn't have any time to put on shoes, for goodness sake? We had a quiet ride back home. Yeah, I could have bet. And when we got back to bed that night, he asked me how many guys did I really have. There is no way in hell he is getting a true answer. I told him ballpark numbers. Let's just say 4 years of college didn't really help. He was so upset, he told me he was sleeping downstairs. Good Lord, he don't even be in the same bed with her. He needs that radiation suit from Back to the Future that Marty had. I know you might judge me when reading this, but you have to understand there's no way he would continue being in a relationship with me if he knew who the old me was. And there you go. Right there, she's admitting it. There is no way he'd be with me. We'd be married right now if he knew what I was really like back then. Don't you think this guy you cling to love so much has a right to know? Come on here. And if a guy had a past, not necessarily a body count numbers, but something equal but different, obviously, but equal that could be shocking to her, you think she would deserve to know? This is what I'm talking about. This is why you must do your homework, your relationship guys. You must do your homework who you're getting serious with. This type of shit. And we're not even done yet. Wait till you hear her talking in circles to justify all this. That is not me today. I have changed. And he would not have had this adoring wife that I am, who's willing to support him in everything he does. Well, of course you're willing to support him in everything he does. He wasn't with any other women prior to you. And he makes darn good money for his age, has investment properties, good job. He's providing you with a nice lifestyle. Of course you're going to support him. It makes your life much better. Things became quiet for a few weeks. You're lucky he didn't run out the door screaming. And he started being nice to me again, but something changed. The first night that we became intimate, he started requesting that I do more in the SEX department. Like the stuff you see in internet porn. Well, he is your husband after all. You married him. He's your everything, blah, blah, blah. And quite frankly, I think you owe him after all. And the fact that he's still there, you should be pretty darn feeling good. I told him no. And I told him my beliefs and that we are not crossing those lines. Oh, okay. So just a few years earlier, you're willing to cross all sorts of lines with these lowlives who could care less about you. But me, your husband, who loves you so much, and you claim to love so much, you're not even willing to, well, you guys get the point. He would get pissy and say things like, you did those things with the other guys, aren't you? And you don't do that with me. I told him this is different, and this is a consecrated marriage and a sacred bed. There is no bed in North America that's sacred with her running around. I also assured him that if I had been in the right state of mind during those times, that stuff would never happen. Right state of mind, huh? I was in a bad place. Or I was drunk. Or I was on drugs. Again, why you do your homework, guys, and who you get serious with. I don't even remember because almost all those experiences were done either in a mind-altering state or in a drunken state. It's stuff I would never do with him because I love him, and I don't want to break that respectful bond that we have towards each other because he feels like he has to compete with the guys from my past. He is not trying to compete with the guys from the past. He wants to enjoy various activities that he's obviously saw online or somewhere, or has in his mind. And this whole, I don't want to break the respectful bond. Believe me, a guy wants his wife to be a freak in the sheets. So I ask all of you, how do I deal with this? Our relationship has definitely changed, and he has to realize that into the old person I used to be. Should we do church counseling and give the pastor or the priest a freaking heart attack? Will time heal this? I want to have a family with this man, and I believe in his potential to be a great leader and provisioner for our future. I don't know how she could possibly have children at this point. How can I let him know that my past isn't my fault and that his resentment towards me is causing emotional distress? Good freaking Lord. Where do I begin to respond to these questions in this scenario here? Okay, the emotional distress. You chose to do the things you did in the past. I don't want to hear about your bad place or your family or the drugs or the alcohol. You chose to do those things. You chose to deliberately lie to him about your past, your numbers, what you engaged in, all that. He had a right to know. And you can't blame him for being a wee bit upset about the whole thing. And furthermore, more upset that you're not willing to engage in certain positions and techniques and all that, when you're more than happy to do it with guys that treat you like garbage. You can't blame him. How do you deal with this? You got to be on your knees, well, no pun intended, on your knees thanking him, praying to the Lord, and not the horoscope god, that thanking the horoscope god, because that's what she believes in, that he's still there. He could have left. He could have kicked her to the curb. A guy like him, 29 years old, who's doing well for himself, he could replace her in a heartbeat. He would take a hit in the divorce. So I would recommend you would be very honest with, if you think you want to have a chance with him, you're honest about everything. And you better start getting quite freaky, honey. Now, nobody should do anything that causes themselves pain or abuse, so you get the point. I make that clear. But if he wants to do those things, you're not willing to do it, even though you did in the past, it's going to be over. End of story. You're lucky he's even talking to you. But you deliberately lied about your past. Directly. We all heard it in your thing. You said flat out you knew that he wouldn't be with you otherwise. So, gentlemen, this is the story here. Be careful. Really take your time to get to know who you're with. Do your homework. Wait for real life situations to occur. And do not buy into this, I'm born again, or some nonsense, or I was in a bad place back then. Sure, lots of people go through hardships in their lives, hardships when they're young, have the misfortune, and it's not their fault, to be born into a effed up family and there's turmoil going on. But there's a point when you become an adult and you make adult decisions to engage in a lot of activities that involve substances or other people's bodies and stuff like that, and you have to take responsibility for your actions. Down the road, it will impact you. And I don't care how many times you go to church and how many times you pray to the Lord, it isn't going to change the situation. And this guy has a right to be upset. He had a right to know. And he has a right to kick her to the curb if he wants to, because it was all a fucking lie. And the fact that, make it even worse, she's not even willing to engage in certain things. And it doesn't sound like the things he wants to do are going to cause her any kind of physical pain. She doesn't want to do it. And also, I might add, because he doesn't do it for her that way. She found herself a prize, the nice guy, to settle with. And there you go. So anyway, guys, that'll be an entertaining one here to go over. And definitely remember these things, as many of you are relationship guys, whether you want to admit it or not. Embark on your relationship journeys in the future. That'll be a good one to go over here. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below and just think about this. Definitely comment. And also, guys, if you like these types of stories, this is more common for my other channel, They Did What. So definitely go on over there and hit the subscribe button and check it out if you haven't done so already. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.